Hey, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Time. I'm going to go ahead and redo today's episode, mainly because it appears that I might have been on mute or there was some audio problems. So we're just going to redo this, and if you get a chance, catch it on the replay. But welcome to Coffee Time. I'm Rhonda, your mobility maestro, and today we're going to continue our conversation that sits at the center of most leadership discussions, or at least the better decisions that leaders can make. And that topic is around trust. Last week, we talked about the confidence gap, that space between having information and actually feeling comfortable enough to act on it. And because leaders can have dashboards, they can have reports, meetings, and smart people in the room, they still hesitate. So today we're going to talk about the reason for that hesitation. And it's not because they're indecisive, it's not because they lack experience, but because somewhere in the middle of the process, trust in the information has weakened. Today, I want to take the next step and talk about what organizations can do to earn that trust consistently. All right. So we're going to jump right in. And of course, I need to back up a little bit. Give me just a minute. We're going back to slide number one, the executive trust model, how organizations build information how organizations build information leaders do not have to question. It says here that trust is not assumed, trust is built. And that's what we want to talk about a little bit. It's a simple way to think about what needs to be present before leaders can rely on information with confidence. The model is not about adding another layer of reporting to it, it's about creating the conditions that make information believable, usable, and decision ready. Because when those conditions exist, leaders don't have to keep asking, is this right? Remember we talked about that last week? Is this right? They don't have to ask that question. They can move to more important questions like, what are we going to do about the information we have since we know that it's right? Okay. All right. So trust usually does not disappear all at once. It usually erodes over time in small moments. One report says one thing, another system says something different, and two teams use the same word but define it differently. A number is presented, but no one can clearly explain where it came from or who's responsible for it. So that leads back into ownership, right? And it's not to beat up the owner, but to know who owns it and that that person, entity, or group of people is reliable. So after a while, without having that, leaders begin building a habit of hesitation. They can check again, they can ask someone else, they wait for another report, and they delay the decision. And that delay is not just about a reporting issue, it becomes an operational issue, a financial issue, and eventually a leadership issue. Let's just take, for example, an organization has 20,000 employees. Half of those employees are key employees that have two mobile devices. They have a handset and a tablet, both connected to a major carrier. 5,000 of those employees maybe only have a handset. And then maybe the other 5,000 have both a handset, a tablet, and also a hotspot. So you're looking at, okay, you've got what, how many devices total? You've got 10,000 people with both a handset and tablet. So that's 20,000 devices. You've got 5,000 people with just a handset. So that's another 5,000. So that's what, 25,000. Then you've got another 5,000 people that also have hotspots, including the tablets and the handsets. So that's 30,000 devices. So you've been given a number at your initial conversation at the contract when you sign your contract with your carrier based on that. And you're saying this is what we should be being billed. However, what's happened over time? Over time, 2,000 employees might have separated from the company, and you've replaced those employees with 2,000 additional employees. The employees that were removed were never removed from the HR file, and that file then is, and that those devices are still billing the carrier level. So you're telling your leadership, we're being billed for 30,000 devices, but over time, it looks like you're being billed for 35 or even 40,000 devices because your HR records weren't updated when people left the company, or people got new devices because devices were broken, and those are being billed additionally or separate. And there's nobody And maybe the company doesn't have the structure in place or want to throw bodies at managing that. And so a shameless plug here is that this is what DMI is here to do. We do this every single day. We help you manage your environment to make sure that your records are correct, that your reporting is correct, so that you're not dealing with an operational issue that becomes a financial issue that eventually becomes a leadership issue. All of that is sound. So if you're operationally sound in your mobility environment, then you're financially sound in your mobility environment, and your leadership can make sound decisions based on that reporting. Had to give you that shameless plug there. DMI, let's talk about it. You can get on my calendar. You'll notice QR codes here and there throughout this talk. In my LinkedIn, there is a link where you can book a meeting with me. And I'm looking forward to that discussion. But we'll move right along and just keep things moving along for time's sake, especially because I had to start over again. Hey, I'm not perfect. So the next slide is talking about trust. Trust is not assumed, trust is built. This is the most important idea in the entire session. Trust is not assumed, trust is built. A polished dashboard doesn't automatically create trust. A familiar system does not automatically create trust. And a senior title does not automatically make the number a credible one. Trust is built when people can see how the information was created. They understand what it means, they know who owns it, and they can confirm that it's being managed consistently. And that's what turns information into confidence. That's what I'm here for today. That's what DMI is here for. We'd love to talk to you about turning your information into confidence. Okay, so the executive trust model is built around 5 ideas, right? And we're going to talk about those 5 ideas on the next slide. Those 5 ideas that the executive trust model is built around, number one is T for transparency. Transparency in the truth source. Leaders should be able to understand where information came from and how it was calculated. The truth source needs to be transparent. R is for responsibility. Every critical metric needs a clear owner. U is for unified definitions. Teams must agree on what numbers actually mean. One person can interpret it as one thing, and another team interpret it as something else. So, a unified understanding and definition of what the numbers mean. And finally, the S is for stewardship. Stewardship is information saying that information has to be maintained, reviewed, and protected over time. So you set the rhythm. You maintain it, you review it, you protect it over time. And then the final T is for timely action. Trusted information should help the organization move, not create another waiting period. So we need to tie that to decisions so that trusted information can help the information move and help the organization move and not create another waiting period. When these 5 elements work together, trust becomes part of the operating model instead of something that leaders have to recreate in every meeting. So, trust, truth source, responsible owner, unified definition, set the rhythm, and tie it to decision. And when those elements work together, trust becomes part of the operating model instead of something leaders have to create in every meeting, right? So, when one of these elements is missing, the symptoms show up quickly. Without transparency, people question the source. Without responsibility, everyone explains the number, but no one owns it. Without unified definition, teams can technically be correct and still disagree. And I know you've experienced that in your tenure if you're a leader, and that's quite a headache. Okay? Without stewardship, yesterday's accurate report becomes today's outdated answer. Without timely action, even trusted information loses value. because the opportunity to act has passed. That is why this model matters. It helps leaders diagnose exactly where confidence begins to break. All right? And that is so important. There's nothing wrong with identifying where confidence is breaking. How else do you fix the hole in the ship? Right? So let's move right along to the next slide. Responsible owner plus unified decision. Two parts of this model deserve special attention because they're often where organizations struggle: a responsible owner and a unified decision. That's where organizations struggle most of the time, or a lot of the time, I should say. A responsible owner means someone is accountable for the integrity of the information and not just for producing a report. Is that person responsible? Who is that? Who are they? Are they responsible? Are they reliable? Okay. That person understands the source. They understand the assumptions, the update cycle, and the exceptions. And then that becomes a clear report to the greater organization. A unified definition means the organization has agreed on what the number means before it begins debating what to do with that number. Think about something as simple as an active device. If this is what it looks like to think about whether or not an organization is agreeing on what something means. An active device. Does active device mean an assigned device? A device is powered on? Is it enrolled in a management platform? Is it connected to a carrier? Has it been used in the last 30 days? You see how, depending on who you're talking to, an active device can mean something different unless there is unified definition and governance around it. Every team may have a reasonable answer, but unless the organization agrees on one definition for the decision being made, leaders are not really looking at one version of the truth, right? So the goal, let's talk about what the goal is a little bit. That goal is not to eliminate every disagreement. There will be disagreements. We don't need to eliminate every single one. What healthy leaders should do is challenge assumptions and ask questions. Disagreements can be really good, but healthy leaders challenge the assumptions and ask questions. The goal is to stop wasting time on avoidable confusion. When ownership is clear and definitions are shared, the conversation changes. Instead of asking whose number is right, the team can ask, what is this number telling us? And what decision do we need to make? So again, you got to get the information right. Once that information is right, then teams and leaders can start asking the right questions. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So this week's challenge, this week's coffee time challenge is for you to choose one number that regularly appears in your leadership meetings. And then I want you to take that one number that regularly appears in your leadership meetings and ask 5 questions. Question number 1, can we clearly explain where the number came from? Is there one person accountable for its integrity? Does everyone use the same definition? How is it reviewed and maintained? And is it available enough to influence the decision? Is it available early enough to influence the decision? You can have a number, but it definitely needs to be available speedily, but it needs to be available with confidence. So, is that number available early enough to influence the decision? You do not need to audit the entire organization. Just start with one number. The answers will show you whether trust is already built in the process or whether your leaders are filling the gaps with assumptions. The strongest organizations do not ask leaders to choose between speed and confidence. They build systems, ownership, and governance, and they give them both. So, systems, ownership, and governance will give your leaders both speed and confidence. And because when information is transparent, it's clearly owned, consistently, and available at the right time, leaders can move with conviction. And that's the real purpose of technology and data. Not more complexity, not more noise, better decisions. All right, so if this conversation has in any way, or if this conversation sounds familiar to you, which it may, because we've been talking about some of this in previous lives, and if you're wondering where trust may be breaking down inside of your mobility environment, scan the QR code and book some time with me. We can talk through what your leaders are trying to see, where the information is coming from today, and whether the current process is giving them the confidence to act. No long sales presentation. It's not going to be me trying to give you a sales presentation. It's going to be 15 to 20 minutes of practical conversation where I'm asking you all of the right questions to help you uncover the answers that you need to help make your environment make sense. That's my goal, to help make it make sense. So remember, visibility drives confidence. Clarity creates confidence, and technology should reduce complexity, not create it. Okay? I thank you so much for joining me again for another Coffee Time Live. It has been my pleasure to speak with you again today. I look forward to talking to you guys next Tuesday at 11:30 for our next coffee time. And until then, sips up. Thank you for joining me.